Hi everyone, I'm Alexander Zeitlin, and this is the Lockdown Lecture Series for Beginner Viola, adapted from the Alias Music Introductions course for the classroom setting. Let's jump into Lesson 6. So last week we finished up our nursery rhymes. You guys had a nice recording to practice with, and you had a whole week to work on just the sound and the quality of your playing. So if you haven't recently, go back and play along with it. Get the best sound you can, because today we're moving on to the minuet in G. So I'm going to start off with just kind of introducing the piece. This is a much longer, more substantial kind of a classical piece that we is our first time tackling something like this. And we are going to go over sort of how to tackle a larger work, and basically we're going to be dividing it up into sections. So we can no longer just kind of go like a whole chunk at a time. We're going to divide it into sections and areas. For example, we will have an A area, like the first half, and a B area in the second half. So it's important to kind of mentally block it off into small pieces and then larger pieces. So I will mark I'll tell you what I'll do. I will mark the sections and then the arrows at the same time. So you guys can write these in. Here we go, that's section 1. Here's A2. There we go. Section A2, here's section A3. And section A4. And now we're going to move on momentarily to the B sections. You guys might notice that all of a sudden we have sharps in the key signature, or A sharp in the key signature. And now sharps and flats will basically affect our arrows. We're not going to discuss in this class what they do. If you've studied other instruments, you may be somewhat aware of what sharps and flats do. You're still going to need, a teacher or a classmate to write in your arrows for you. I will write it in for all of this piece, but as you learn other pieces, you will need arrow markings for your finger positions. But if you have further questions about that, that's a question for your teacher and for your classroom teacher or private teacher. You guys will also notice that this piece is in a different time signature than all the songs that we've learned. We're also not going to go over bar structure. That's also a question for your private teacher and classroom teacher. We're just kind of going to take the notes individually, learn the notes individually, and also just be able to kind of play them one after the other and not worry how they fit into the larger structure of things. I kind of missed the section marker here. Okay, we got 2 more. A B3 and a B4 section, and we're almost done. So once I'm done marking the section, you could write them in. For today's lecture, you may even just want to keep up as much as you can and then go back to write in your arrows later, because we're really just going to work on the first section only. Here we go. Here's the last section. This is B4. There we go. Okay, so those are all the arrows. You can mark them so that you have a marked part. Obviously, in this case, all the sections just finish at the end of the line. So let's take a look at how we tackle a section like this. Now, the first part doesn't change. We still need to know what strings and fingers to play it with. So we start by writing in fingerings and bowings, or fingerings and strings, excuse me. So strings and fingers. So let's do that for the first section. Now you guys should already start to be kind of being able to do this, maybe not entirely without the chart, but somewhat without the chart. So D0, G0, and then G1. As you see, the notes just go up. G2, G3, and D0, G0, G0. This is D1. And you guys are going to write in all the notes for the A sections. That's going to be your homework. So A2, A3, and A4 by yourselves, because it's still good practice figuring out strings and fingers on your own. This goes back to G0, but you guys can copy these down for now. So I wrote in all the strings and fingers. That's step 1. Step 2 is then you're just going to practice it with whole bows. We already know how to do that. We've been doing that for other songs. So let me just write that down. That's our next step. Practice with whole bows. I'm just going to write down 3 times because you want to practice it till you know it well for a few days. So here's the first section with whole bows. There's no rhythm to it. It's just going to be long bows on every note. After you practice it, you can play along with this and give it a try. So you may want to practice it like that for a couple days until you feel like you've got the hang of the notes and you're not getting lost in the music. But let's take a look today at how to deal with rhythm, because like I promised, we're finally going to get to learn how to play with rhythm. Now you do have to know your lengths of your notes. You need to know that a quarter note is 1 beat and an eighth note is a half beat and a dotted half note is 3 beats. However, we're going to really stick to 2 things right now. The quarter note, which gets 1 beat, is going to be a whole bow. There's 1 whole note or 1 whole beat. It's going to be 1 whole bow. And an eighth note that gets a half a beat is going to be a half bow. That's it. Those are kind of like our 2 main ideas. But I'm not going to write down whole bow. I'm going to actually write down long. So just think of it as a long bow. And then here I'm going to write the half bow as a short bow. Because even though I want you to do think of a whole note, a quarter note being a whole bow, just think of it as a really long bow. The eighth note as a short note, I want you to actually think of it as a less than half bow so that you don't accidentally use too much. So the thing is, we only have 1 whole bow, but we have 2 halves of the bow, the lower half and the upper half. So you might end up doing half bows here in the lower half, or here in the upper half. So I have a little exercise for you all to help you practice that. And this will be your rhythm warm-up that you're going to do every time before you work on your minuet. So it's going to look like this. A quarter note. You're just going to do this on D0. So 2 eighth notes, 2 more eighth notes. So whole bow, 4 half bows. And then another whole bow, and then 4 half bows, and you can repeat it a few times to just kind of get the pattern. And here's what it would look like if I were to play it. So I'm playing this right here, just on the note D0. So I have long bow, 4 short bows, long bow, 4 short bows. And this is what it sounds like if I play it in time. And the bow distribution is important because if I have a long note but I use my bow too fast, I'm going to not have enough bow to finish my note. If I have a short note, I start using the bow really slowly, I will play it too long. So once you have practiced the exercise, you get to practice the whole first section, A1, with rhythm. So you see a quarter note, you use the whole bow or long bow. You see an eighth note, you use half the bow or less than half the bow to make sure you don't overuse it. And if you practice it a few times, it should sound like this. see how I use my whole bows and half bows to help me with the rhythm. At first, you might not even notice like you're exactly doing the rhythm might not be correct. But if you just repeat it enough, you'll see that using the bow distribution properly like this will actually make you automatically play with the rhythm after like a few tries. So keep practicing. Your homework is to learn all 4 of the A sections. And then next lesson, we will talk about how to manage what we think of as new section and review sections. Review sections, you should have a way to review them quickly so you could spend all of your time on new stuff and go forward in your music. So that's what we will be going over next. One last thing, haven't talked about how to play this note. It's 3 beats instead of 1. So all you're going to do is you move your bow extra slow, the same speed that it took you to, move one bow. You're going to go 3 times as slow. And for whole bow is 1. For the whole bow, you're going to go 1, 2, 3. Just a nice slow 3-beat bow. All right, happy practicing. I will see you guys next lesson.